On the cold moon of Veralis, deep within the Silra Empire, there was a royal palace made of blue crystal and silver roots. The palace shined under the twin moons, but one part of it stayed hidden behind thick curtains and guards. That part belonged to Princess Erila. Erila was born with a weak energy core and a twisted lower limb. In her world, strength was everything. Warriors ruled. Leaders were chosen based on power and ability to protect. A weak princess, even if royal by blood, was seen as broken. Many whispered that Erila should have been hidden at birth. Some said, she brought shame to the Silra name, but Erila was not ashamed. She had grown used to silence, to the way others looked past her. She walked slowly, leaning on a thin walking staff made of soft metal, and moved through the palace like a ghost. She spent her days painting stars on the walls of her private garden, reading ancient human texts, and listening to the sounds of distant galaxies on the palace's signal waves. Her parents, the king and queen, loved her, but their love was quiet. Afraid, they never brought her to public events. When nobles came seeking mates for their sons, Erila was never introduced. She sat behind mirrors, watching her younger sisters take the spotlight. Her heart hurt sometimes, but she never let herself cry where anyone could see. One day, everything began to change. A ship from Earth arrived on the moon. It carried human diplomats, engineers, and cultural exchange officers. The Silra had agreed to a peaceful visit to discuss trade, defense, and education. Humans were still new to the galaxy, but they were gaining attention for their strange mix of softness and strength. Among the human visitors was a young officer named Matthew. He wasn't anyone special, just a cultural officer in training. He loved old alien music and stories, and he had signed up for this mission because he wanted to see more of the galaxy. He had no idea that this visit would change his life. Matthew first saw Erila by accident. He was walking through one of the palace's side corridors, looking for the music hall, when he noticed a silver door slightly open. Inside, he saw someone. Sitting quietly in a garden, surrounded by glowing flowers, the girl was painting the sky on a wall, each star placed with care. She wore a long robe of soft green, and her hair flowed like dark water. Her leg was bent strangely beneath her, and she moved slowly. Matthew almost walked away, not wanting to intrude, but something made him stay a moment longer. She turned, her head slightly, sensing someone. Matthew stepped back quickly and left without a word. But that image stayed with him all day. He asked one of the palisades, carefully, about the girl in the garden. The aide frowned and said softly, "That is Princess Erila. She is not presented to visitors." "Why?" Matthew asked. "She is not fit to rule. Not fit to mate. Her body is weak. Her energy is unstable. She is ... different." Matthew didn't like the way the aide said those words. Thought about the girl with the calm eyes and steady hand, painting stars even though no one watched. Her? He wanted to know more. Over the next few days, Matthew passed near the silver door on purpose. Sometimes he saw her painting. Sometimes she just sat and looked up at the sky. Finally, on the fourth day, he gathered courage and knocked gently. There was silence. Then, a soft voice said, "You can enter." He walked in slowly, holding his hands behind his back. "Hi," he said, a little nervous. "I saw you painting. It's beautiful." Erila looked at him with wide eyes. "You're human, Des." He smiled. "I'm Matthew, I know," she said quietly. "I listened to the names of visitors. Most don't come here. I didn't mean to disturb you." "You didn't. You're the first person who spoke to me without pity." Matthew sat down on a nearby bench. "I don't pity you. I just think you seem peaceful and talented." Erila didn't smile, but her eyes softened. "I can't stay." They talked for a while. He told her about Earth, about oceans, music, food, and cities that touched the sky. She told him about her garden, her dreams of traveling through stars, her wish to see something more than the palace walls. He returned the next day, the next, They talked about everything. Orilla even laughed once when Matthew told her about a human child who thought moon rocks were candy. Her laugh was quiet and soft, but it stayed in Matthew's memory like a song. Soon their visits became something special. Not official, not formal. Just two people sharing time, stories, and silence. But good things don't stay hidden forever. On the 7th day, one of the royal advisors saw Matthew leaving Orilla's garden. The advisor's face turned cold, and he reported it to the council. The whispers began quickly. A human, spending time with the broken princess? They called him foolish. They said she would never be allowed to bond, especially not with an outsider. But Matthew didn't stop visiting. On the 10th day, the stars lit the sky in soft purple. Matthew sat beside Orilla on the grass. He looked at her for a long moment. "I'm glad I met you," he said. "No one's ever said that to me," she whispered. Matthew took a deep breath. "They should have. You deserve to be seen and heard." Orilla looked away. "You say that now. But when the court finds out, I don't care what the court thinks," Matthew said, his voice gentle but firm. Orilla finally looked into his eyes. She had seen many things in life: mockery, silence, avoidance. Never this, never someone who truly meant it. She didn't know it yet, but her life was about to change forever. Nobles gathered early. Whispers filled the marble halls. Someone had seen the human officer talking with the hidden Princess Orilla, the one they never spoke about. The news spread like fire. Some were curious, others were angry. Few were scared. What did it mean? Humans showing interest in a Silra royal. And that royal? The king and queen listened in silence. The queen's hand trembled slightly as she held her morning tea. She had always hoped Orilla would one day find someone to see her for more than her weakness. But she had never thought it would be a human. Not because humans were bad, but because the Silra court was proud and stubborn. Meanwhile, Orilla sat in her garden, waiting. Matthew came, just like he had promised. She was nervous, not because of him, but because the wind felt different that morning. Like something was about to change. "Good morning," Matthew said with a smile. "They know," Orilla said softly. He stopped walking. "Who?" "Everyone. The court, the nobles, maybe even my parents." Matthew sighed and sat beside her. "Then let them know." "I don't care. You should," she said. "You could lose your place in the delegation. They could send you home." "If they do," he said. "Then I'll go back knowing I met someone worth more than any trade." Agreement. Orilla looked at him, surprised. "Why do you say things like that?" "Because they're true." For a long time they sat in silence. Orilla slowly took his hand, just resting her fingers near his. Her touch was cold, but steady. "You know," she said, "no one ever asked me what I wanted. Not once." Matthew turned to her. "So, what do you want?" She closed her eyes. "I want to travel, to walk on planets without guards. Want to draw comets from the edge of real ships. I want someone to speak to me like you do not, as if I'm broken, but as if I'm just me." He nodded. "Then maybe we can start with one small wish at a time." She smiled, just a little. That afternoon, Matthew was called to the High Council of Silra. The room was large and cold, with crystal walls and silver statues of past warriors. 12 nobles stood in a circle. The queen and king sat on high thrones. Matthew stood alone in the center. "You have been seen visiting the private gardens," one noble said. "Do you deny it?" "I do not," Matthew said clearly. "You speak with Princess Orilla." "Yes." "Do you seek her hand?" The question came sharp and sudden, like a blade. Matthew didn't answer right away. He looked at the queen. Her eyes were tired but not unkind. He looked at the king, who stared with a hard face but didn't speak. Finally, Matthew said, "I haven't asked yet, but I want to." Gasps filled the room. One noble shouted, "She is unfit. She cannot bear strong airs. Her energy is weak." Another added, "You disgrace the alliance." But Matthew raised his voice just enough. "What does strength mean to you? Is it power in the limbs or power in the heart?" The room went still. "She has lived all her life in shadows," Matthew continued. "Yet she remains kind, gentle, and wise, that is strength. And it's more than I've seen in many who call themselves warriors." The nobles whispered among themselves. "You are human," one said. "You do not understand our ways." "You're right," Matthew replied. "I don't, because in our ways, we believe no one is born lesser. No one is unworthy of love or respect." He bowed deeply to the council. "I will accept your decision, even if it means I must leave. But my heart remains unchanged." When he walked out of the chamber, the queen said nothing, but her fingers clenched the side of her throne. Word reached Orilla quickly. She stood in her garden, staring at the stars, her heart racing. She had heard about court trials before, how cold, how cruel. And yet Matthew had faced them alone. For her a day passed, then another. On the third day, Matthew did not come. She waited in the garden from morning to night. Her hand trembled as she painted a tiny blue star. Then her brush slipped. For the first time in many months, Orilla wept. But Matthew had not given up. He was told to leave, but he had one final day on the moon, and he used it for her. He came quietly through the service tunnel near the garden. When Orilla saw him, her heart jumped. "I thought you were gone," she whispered. "Almost," he said with a gentle smile. First she stepped closer. He held out a small, human-made necklace. It was simple, just a tiny silver circle on a chain. "We give these two people we care about," he said. "It means you're important, and that I'll come back." She took it with shaking hands. "Why me?" He looked into her eyes. "Because you're strong, even when no one sees it.
Yes.
Your laugh is soft, but it stays with me. When you paint stars, I believe you could fly among them." Tears filled her eyes again, but this time she didn't hide them. "Matthew?" She whispered his name like a song on her lips. "If you'd let me," he said, "I would ask to be more than your friend, but only if you choose that." Orilla looked at him, heart full, its pain and hope dancing inside. She didn't answer yet, but her hand reached out and gently touched his. Orilla sat alone in her chamber that night, holding the small silver necklace in her hand. It was light, simple, but it felt heavy with meaning. No one had ever given her a gift before, not like this. It wasn't about duty or silence. It was real. It came from the heart of someone who saw her, not her weakness. She wore the necklace around her neck and looked at herself in the mirror. For the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. But outside the quiet walls of her chamber, the palace was buzzing with tension. Matthew's bold words in the court had shocked many. While a few of the younger nobles were impressed by his courage, most were furious. They saw his action as a challenge to Silra tradition. Human asking for the hand of a disabled royal was something they had never imagined. The queen held a long meeting with her advisors. The king stayed silent for most of it. Finally, the queen asked only one question. "Does our daughter not deserve to be happy?" No one had an answer. The next day, Matthew was officially asked to leave the palace and prepare for return to the human fleet. It was a quiet order, not spoken loudly, but he understood it clearly. He packed his things without complaint. Still, he asked for one last visit with Orilla. The palace guard refused him, but someone else heard, one of the younger palace workers, an alien girl named Lishti, had often watched Matthew and Orilla talk. She saw the way Orilla smiled when he spoke. She knew it was something special. And so, she brought Orilla the message. Matthew would leave by sunset. He wouldn't be allowed near the garden again. Era felt her chest tighten. She couldn't let him leave like that, not without telling him how she truly felt. She didn't wait for guards. She didn't wait for rules. With her walking staff and the help of Lishti, she made her way through back corridors to the shuttle deck where the human ship waited. Her steps were slow, painful even, but she didn't stop. Every part of her burned with determination. Meanwhile, Matthew stood beside his ship. Other human officers around him were loading supplies. The silence between them all was heavy. Matthew didn't speak much. He kept thinking of Orilla, her eyes, her voice, the way she looked at the stars. Just before he was about to step onto the ship, her voice called his name. He turned and saw her, Princess Orilla, walking through the crowd, breathless but standing, tall, the necklace still around her neck, shining under the lights. Everyone turned to look. Even the Silra guards were too shocked to move. She stopped a few steps away and looked up at him. "You asked me something," she said softly. "I didn't answer." Matthew stepped forward. "I remember." Ryla took a deep breath. "No one ever gave me a choice before. They made decisions for me because they thought I couldn't decide for myself. But I'm tired of letting them decide how I live, or who I care for." She looked into his eyes. "So I say this now. Yes, Matthew, I want to be with you, if you still want me." The silence in the docking area broke into gasps and whispers. Matthew smiled, deeply moved. He stepped forward, gently taking her hands. "Of course I still want you." A few nobles tried to protest, but the queen appeared behind them. "Let her speak," the queen said firmly. "Let her choose." Arila turned to face her mother. "I've made my choice." The queen's face softened. "Then so be it." But the storm was not over yet. The Silra High Commander, Lord Terrell, stepped forward with fire in his eyes. He was old, proud, and believed in strength above all. He bowed slightly to the queen, but raised his voice. "This sets a dangerous path," he warned. "If we allow a human to bond with royal blood, especially one who is not strong, what message does it send to the galaxy?"
Matthew
didn't let the insult slide. "Maybe it sends the message that true strength isn't in the body, but in the courage to love without fear." Lord Tyrell scowled. "Romantic fool." "Maybe," Matthew said, "but fools like me have changed worlds." Before any more words could turn to shouting, the king finally stood. His voice was deep and steady. "Our daughter has been silent for too long. Let no one silence her again. She is chosen, and we accept it." The room quieted. Matthew and Arila stood side by side as two guards stepped forward, not to stop them, but to escort them back to the palace safely. That night, a quiet celebration was held in Arila's private garden. Only a few people were allowed: her parents, Matthew Lishti, and a few trusted others. No grand lights, no loud songs, just soft music, warm food, and peaceful joy. Ere Isla spoke to Matthew in whispers. "I'm scared." "So am I," he admitted. "But being with you makes me brave. They will watch us. Let them." He said, "They'll see something beautiful." And as the stars glowed above, Matthew reached out his hand. Rilla placed hers in his, and together they looked up, not at the past, not at the judgment, but at the endless sky that belonged to both of them. A few days had passed since Arila made her choice. The mood in the palace was strange quiet, yet full of tension. Some nobles still whispered behind curtains, while others watched with silent curiosity.
Oh.
No one had expected the forgotten princess to step into the light, and no one had expected a human to walk beside her. The royal family prepared for the bonding ritual, an ancient ceremony of the Silra. It was rare, sacred, and powerful. When two people joined their spirits in truth, their energy would link for life. The bonding didn't just connect hearts, it connected fates. Normally, Silra pairs who joined in this way were both trained warriors or nobles of perfect health. Never before had someone like Arila taken part, and certainly not with someone from another species. Still, the queen stood strong. She had watched her daughter suffer in silence for too long. Now, she chose to support her openly. The king said little, but his eyes followed Arila more now. He seemed to be thinking deeply about what kind of strength truly mattered. Matthew spent his days learning the steps of the ritual. Lishti helped him practice the ancient words. Nervous not because of the ceremony itself, but because he wanted to do everything right for Arila. "You don't have to be perfect," Arila told him gently one night. They sat together on a bench beneath a glowing tree. "Just have to be yourself." "Being myself got me in trouble with your council," Matthew joked with a smile. "And into my heart," she added softly. Matthew held her hand. Then, it was worth it. The day of the ceremony arrived. A large gathering formed in the Star Hall, a wide chamber with a glass ceiling that showed the sky. The floor shimmered with silver dust. Light from the moons poured in, bathing everyone in a soft glow. The queen wore royal blue, standing tall beside the king. The high priest stood at the center, waiting with calm eyes. Matthew and Arila walked in side by side, dressed in traditional Silra robes. Hers was a deep green. His was dark gray with silver lines. The necklace he gave her still hung around her neck. As they reached the center, the high priest spoke. "Do you come here freely, without force?" "Yes," Arila said firmly. "Yes," Matthew added. The priest nodded and let the bond begin. They stood facing each other. Matthew repeated the ancient words in Silra, his accent rough but sincere. Arila smiled, her voice clear and strong when she spoke her part. Then the priest placed a small glowing crystal between their hands. As they touched it together, a warm light began to grow. Their energy fields started to react, gently weaving around each other. Soft colors, green from her, gold from him, danced in the air. Then suddenly, the light wavered. The chamber doors slammed open. Lord Terrell stepped in, armor shining, eyes burning with anger. Behind him were 3 elite warriors. "This bond is a mistake," he shouted. "The council may have allowed it, but I will not let tradition fall without challenge." The crowd gasped. The high priest stepped forward. "You dare interrupt a sacred ritual?" "I do," Terrell growled. "By ancient law, a public challenge may be issued before a bond is sealed. I call for the test of worth." The queen stood. "She has already proven herself, not by our rules," Terrell cut in. "Let the human fight. If he wins, I will accept the bond. If he fails, the bond cannot be completed." Matthew looked at Arila. "What does this mean?" "You must face him," she said, voice shaking. "Not to the death, but to prove your heart." "I'm not a warrior," Matthew whispered. "You are brave," she said. "That is more important." The high priest sighed. "The law allows it. We cannot refuse." Matthew stepped forward. "I accept." A circle was drawn on the star floor. The energy crystal was set aside. Matthew and Terrell entered the ring. The rules were simple. One must knock the other out of the circle or make them yield. No weapons. Only spirit and strength. Terrell was fast and trained. Matthew was not. The crowd watched in silence as the match began. Terrell rushed forward, his strikes sharp. Matthew dodged 1-2, but was hit in the shoulder. He stumbled but stayed up. Terrell mocked him. "This is the man you chose, princess." Matthew looked at Arila, who stood still, eyes filled with hope. He remembered her laugh, her drawings, her kindness, and he stood tall again. He didn't try to fight with fists. He used his body to dodge, to stay in the circle. Terrell grew angry. Losing patience, when he charged again, Matthew stepped aside. Terrell slipped and almost fell. Matthew spoke loudly. "Maybe I can't win with strength, but I stand here because I love her, and I won't step out until you see that." Terrell charged once more. This time Matthew grabbed his arm and used his weight to pull him forward. With a loud thud, Terrell fell out of the circle. Gasps filled the hall. The high priest raised his hand. "The challenge is complete. The bond may continue." Matthew stood, breathing hard. Arila ran to him, tears in her eyes. "You did it. I didn't want to fight," he said. "But I couldn't let them take this away from us." The crystal was returned. They placed their hands on it once more. This time, the light was strong. Green and gold swirled around them. The energy wrapped their hands, their arms, their hearts. A soft chime rang through the air. The high priest spoke the final words. "Let the stars witness their bond. Their souls are now one." The crowd stayed quiet, watching the beauty of the moment. Even the king wiped a small tear from his eye. Isla looked at Matthew. "We did it. Together," he whispered. And above them, the stars continued to shine. After the bonding ritual, something changed, not just in the palace, but across the Silra Empire. News of the ceremony traveled fast. A human had joined in sacred union with a Silra princess. Not just any princess, but the one everyone had forgotten, the one no noble wanted. Now, she had completed the ancient bond in front of nobles, warriors, and even the high priest, and she had done it with pride. Many on other Silra worlds heard the story with surprise. Some refused to believe it, others were curious. And a growing number felt something new: hope. Many Silra children were born with small differences or weaker energy, and they were often hidden. Now, their families looked at Aryla as proof that weakness did not mean worthlessn. Aryla received hundreds of messages, not from nobles, but from farmers, teachers, and children. They thanked her, they asked to meet her, they shared their own stories of being ignored or laughed at. Aryla sat in her garden, reading the letters with tears in her eyes. Matthew watched her and smiled. "You've started something bigger than both of us." "I didn't mean to," she said softly. "That's why it matters," he replied. The queen saw the shift in the people. Even the nobles who once whispered now kept quiet or bowed deeper when Aryla passed. The king invited Matthew to a private meeting. No guards, no formal setting, just a quiet talk in a stone room with soft lights. "You changed my daughter's life," the king said. "She changed mine first," Matthew answered. The king nodded. "Our people are slow to accept new paths, but perhaps that time is ending." Matthew didn't ask for titles or rewards. He only asked for one thing: that Aryla be allowed to travel beyond the palace. "She belongs to the stars," he said. With the royal family's permission, a small ship was prepared. Aryla named it Starglow. It was sleek, silver blue, and designed for peaceful travel. Matthew and Aryla planned a journey across 5 nearby systems to meet people, learn from others, and share silver culture. Lishti, the helpful palace worker, joined them as a guide and assistant. She had become close to Aryla and wanted to help others who had once felt forgotten. Their journey was quiet at first. Each world they visited welcomed them carefully. Aryla spoke to small groups, shared her art, and told her story. Matthew stood beside her, but never in front. He let her voice shine. On the 3rd world, a young Silra girl approached Aryla and asked, "Is it true that you once thought no one would ever love you?" Aryla knelt down and touched the girl's hand. "Yes, I believed that for many years. But now you're a princess who travels with stars," the girl said. "And so can you," Aryla whispered. Matthew watched that moment, heart full. It was more powerful than any speech, more lasting than any throne. But not everyone was happy. Deep in the outer systems, a small group of Silra extremists called the Order of Purity saw Aryla's rise as a threat. They believed only perfect warriors should rule, and they hated the idea of bonding with outsiders. To them, the union between Aryla and a human was the start of weakness. Spreading through their culture, they began to plan. The first attack was a smaller hacked message sent to Aryla's ship, warning her to stop the journey. The second came 2 days later, when one of their landing sites was surrounded by masked fighters. Matthew and Lishti helped lead the local people to safety, while Aryla used the ship's signal systems to send out a call for help. No one was hurt, but the message was clear. Someone wanted them silenced back on the ship. Aryla sat in her chair, quiet and still. "Maybe we should stop," Lishti said gently. "Just for a while." "No," Aryla said. "That's what they want." Matthew looked at her, worry in his eyes. "They'll keep trying." "Then we'll keep going," she said. For the ones who still hide in silence, they adjusted their plans. More guards were added. Local leaders helped with protection. The people themselves stood strong. On the 4th world, hundreds came to hear Aryla speak, more than any royal in years. Mothers held their children, elders shared stories. A group of teens gave Aryla a necklace made of stardust gems, saying, "You make us feel brave." Matthew stayed close, always watching, always ready. He was no soldier, but he had the heart of one. When a scout spotted a ship from the Order of Purity near their path, he worked with the local defense team to send a warning pulse that forced the enemy to retreat. Aryla watched him work with calm, focus, and great care. One night she took his hand and said, "You protect more than just me. You protect this dream." He smiled. You gave me the dream." On the final planet of their journey, Arela stood under a glass dome filled with stars above. Thousands had gathered. She spoke without a script. "I was once a girl hidden in a garden. They told me I would never lead, never bond, never be more than a shadow behind royal walls. But someone from another world who looked at me and saw not what I lacked, but what I was." She paused, voice steady. "Now I speak not just for myself, but for all who are told they are less. You are not. You are more than their rules, more than their fears." The crowd rose to their feet, and a silent energy passed through them. Arela looked at Matthew. He nodded once proudly, and as the stars above shimmered like a sea of fireflies, the two of them knew they had only just begun. The final planet in their journey was peaceful. It had green hills, clear skies, and small villages that welcomed Arela and Matthew with open arms. People brought gifts, shared songs, and even held a quiet festival in their honor. But beneath, the calm danger moved quietly. The order of purity had not given up. After many failed warnings and a retreat, they had decided on one final plan. This time, it would not be a message. This time, they would strike at the heart of Arela's strength. Her voice on the night of the celebration, while Arela spoke under the stars to a group of young students, a strange signal hit the local power grid. The lights flickered. Wind stopped. From the edge of the crowd, a blast shook the air. Smoke filled the sky. Screams rang out. Matthew pulled Arela behind the stage as guards rushed forward. Lashti tried to calm the frightened children. People scattered, hiding. Behind trees and walls, a black ship landed near the outer field. 5 masked attackers stepped out. They wore dark armor, and their leader shouted, "Bring her out! She's not Silra. She's weakness in royal skin." Matthew stood in front of Arela. His heart raced. He had no weapon, but he would not let them touch her. One of the guards handed him a small stun baton. He held it tight, ready to defend. "You can't win," the leader shouted. But then the crowd started to rise. One by one, people stood not with weapons, but with courage. Villagers, students, elders all formed a wall between the attackers and the stage. The masked leader laughed. "They can't protect her." Arela stepped forward, her walking staff in hand. Robe was torn from the blast and dust covered her face, but her eyes burned with light. "You say I am weak," she said loudly, "but you hide your face. I do not." The leader growled. "You dishonor our ways?" "Our ways?" Arela asked. "Or your fear of change?" The attackers moved forward. Matthew raised his baton. Guards stood ready. Then something happened. The small crystal on Arela's necklace, the one Matthew gave her, began to glow. Softly at first, then brighter. The energy of their bond pulsed from it, filling the air. The attackers paused. One stepped back. "This is not just my bond," Arela said, her voice like wind through trees. "It is a signal to all who feel forgotten. I am not perfect. I never was. But I am not broken. And neither are they." Her words spread through speakers across the field. The people began to chant her name. Arela, the leader, growled again and ran forward, but Matthew met him halfway. They clashed. Matthew wasn't stronger, but he was fast and full of purpose. He dodged the first blow, struck with the baton, and pushed the leader back. The guards joined him, tackling another attacker. The rest of the crowd moved forward. The attackers, now outnumbered, began to retreat. Their ship lifted off with smoke and sparks, leaving them behind. The guards quickly secured them. When it was over, silence returned. Arela stood at the center of it all. Her hands shook, but she stayed tall. Matthew walked to her, his arms scratched but smiling. "You were amazing," he said. "You were brave," she answered. The high priest who had arrived during the fight stepped forward. "I have seen many rulers," he said. "But today, I saw a leader." Arela didn't smile. She simply nodded. Double quotes. "Thank you." Over the next days, news of the attack and her speech spread fast. Hall screens across systems showed the moment. Arela stood against the masked attackers with nothing but her staff and her voice. People called her the Starborn Voice. The Silver Council met once again. This time, not to argue or judge but to vote. They voted to remove the ancient rule that only perfect energy bearers could lead. They voted to open the bond ceremony to all who loved in truth, no matter their background, their species, or their strength. And finally, they gave Princess Arila a new title, Ambassador of Unity. With that title, Arila and Matthew began a new mission. They visited not just Silra worlds, but human colonies, trade stations, and even planets of other species. They listened, they shared, helped build understanding between worlds. Their ship, Starglow, became a symbol of peace. One day, while floating in orbit above a blue planet, Matthew stood at the viewing window there. Isla joined him. Thinking again? She asked. Always, he smiled. About what? How lucky I am, he said, that I got lost in a palace one day and found you. Arila leaned her head on his shoulder. How lucky I was that someone finally asked, "Will you mate with me?" They both laughed softly. He turned to her. And you said yes. I did, she whispered. I would again. Beside their window, the stars stretched wide, endless, beautiful, and full of stories, waiting to be written, and among them, one story now shined the brightest, the story of a forgotten princess, and the human who saw her.